of you who may not know me, there's a lot of you out there, I should point out that I am not exactly a granola making, earth mother, agave nectar in my herbal tea kind of girl. For example, I like my meds. Right this very second, from the contents of my purse, I could stock a small pharmacy. I often entertain the idea of getting an epidural just to get through a bad hair day. And because, see, I'm more of a full face of makeup in the middle of the night, surround me with nurses holding beautiful jars of multicolored pain medications kind of person. So this totally drug-free, anti-pain meds, labor at home, and experience the womanliness of each contraction thing was pretty much the exact opposite of what I would have chosen for myself. So you might be wondering what qualified me for this task. Well, let me list my credentials. 1A, I have never been pregnant. My husband and I adopted our twins right after they turned 6. B, until deciding to help with this birth, I have participated in exactly 0 births. Well, that's not exactly true. I did help my dog Maggie about a year ago. But it wasn't a good scene because it kind of ended with a panicky emergency van right across town for a C-section, which was totally not my fault. But I did feel really bad about it. But anyway. My final and probably most important qualification was that my calendar was completely clear through the middle of April. So, I mean, seriously, what woman would not want this voice and a real-life experience helping her navigate life's most challenging moment? In a nutshell, this was the gig. I was to help Trish labor at home as long as possible before heading to the hospital for the delivery. There was a birth plan on file, a nurse midwife would be doing any real work that had to be done, and the hospital knew we'd be heading their way. My main duty was to help Trish stay focused and relaxed. So 3 weeks ago, in the dark hours of a quiet Sunday morning, my phone rang, and Trish was in labor. So while my family slept, I headed across the street. At Labor Central, things seemed fairly calm. Contractions weren't really what you could call regular yet, maybe somewhere around 10 minutes apart. Trish was talking and walking around pretty normally. In fact, their other 2 children weren't even out of bed yet. So I'm thinking, this isn't bad. I can totally handle this. I even thought, I should have brought a book or something. But instead, I scrambled Trish some eggs and got the Zen music going while we waited for the midwife to arrive. She did. But once Jared, her husband, got the older kiddos out of the house, things started to get more serious. We started timing the contractions, and we talked about how the other deliveries had gone, ranking this pain to that pain. Having been present for the second baby's birth, Jared, the midwife, concluded that we'd have a baby there by bedtime. So since I was the inexperienced one, I filed that little prediction away in the old noggin and made mental prep. We didn't have to wait too long until the labor intensified, and Jared, the midwife, started applying pressure to different areas of Trish's back and hips to help her get through the waves of pain. But I wasn't quite ready to go all hands on deck yet. So I sat back and charted the contractions and snapped a few pics. Now for future reference and for your own personal safety, please use extreme caution when snapping photographs of minimally dressed pregnant women laboring on all fours. They're a little touchy. Now, here's a trivia question for the men that might come in handy one day. There are many different positions in which a woman can labor. Do you know the most comfortable position? Anyone? Yeah, the answer is none of them. Seriously, is there a comfortable position for getting hit in the crotch with a baseball? You get my point. Speaking of writhing and pain, have I mentioned the sound that fish makes during a contraction? It's not a pretty Southern belle kind of sound. It's a low, guttural, primeval growl that is apparently the best sound to be making if you want to stay physically relaxed enough to have productive contractions. It's a cross between a mournful walrus and that sound you make when you big bad stub your toe in the middle of the dark middle of the night, you know. I had to make a conscious effort to relax my face. I mean, I was just every time she made the sound, this was not easy work. It went on for a long time until Trish was exhausted. I was exhausted for her. The midwife checked the progress and found out Trish was only dilated 4 centimeters out of 10. We weren't even halfway there yet. So Trish was sent to rest in bed because we were anticipating a few more hours of this before we even headed to the hospital. But if that poor girl even got to sleep 10 minutes, I'd be surprised, because in just a few minutes, we were back on duty. Since it was pretty outside, a sunny, breezy day, we decided to go out for a bit. Trish padded around the yard, and just as I was thinking of heading us out to the sidewalk on the street, she braced herself on the fence for a contraction that seemed to end with the baby doing one of those triple sow cow baby spinny things. And after that, it got even worse. By 2 o'clock or so, we'd had enough of the great outdoors and headed back inside to cool off. After laps around the dining room and the living room, Trish was ready to get back in the jacuzzi. I haven't mentioned the jacuzzi yet, have I? Now, this was our second time in the tub. She'd done this earlier in the morning to ease the pain, so I was all for it. At this point, I was seriously thinking this natural childbirth thing was a lot harder than it's always looked on TV. The midwife decided to get in the tub this time. Don't even ask. While she held the fetal monitor, Jared was there on standby for the lower back compressions, and I was on the side of the tub handling the iPod. That's important. Tuning in everything from Enya to the B-52s, trying to find something to set a positive, encouraging mood. I kept thinking, where the heck is Salt and Pepper's pushing? Jacuzzi or no, as hard as Trish was laboring, I felt she had to be having the world's most productive contractions. But I could sense Jared and the midwife were thinking I needed to chill out. But when Trish started sobbing and begging to go to the hospital, I started to freak out. I was ready to carry her to my van, but I was the newbie in the room who didn't seem to understand we were still hours away from showtime. So again, I shut my mouth, which, as anyone who knows me can attest, is not easy for me to do. And just went back to pouring warm water over Trish as she moaned and shivered and cried to be taken to the hospital and drugged. This was one of those things we talked about weeks ago. We all knew there'd come this moment when she'd lose her mojo, when it would all seem too hard and she'd want to give up. So we just kept assuring her that she was doing great, which she was, and that this was what she wanted. So finally, thankfully, it was time for another progress check. And yay, hallelujah, she's at 7 centimeters. Trish asked one more time to go to the hospital. But before anything much could be said, she slapped her arm down into the water, drenching all of us. No one made a peep. Silently wiped it away. As if she could sense what I was thinking, Trish stood up in that tub and announced she was done and was going to the hospital, and she had to drive herself there. I have never been more relieved. I started rushing around to find clothes and shoes. The midwife asked Trish to lie down for a minute so she could tell exactly where we were. But bless her heart, she could hardly lay down before she was up and screaming through another contraction. All of a sudden, the midwife said, "Trish, are you pushing?" To which Trish growled, "Yes." All I could think was, oh, crap. The midwife quickly pulled on one glove to check what was going on. She looked at me while she firmly said to Trish, "Trish, I need you to listen. We are not going to make it to the hospital. I need you to turn around and sit down right here on the floor." And I immediately thought, whoa, really? On the floor? I think I was in shock. No, I know I was in shock. I'm actually thinking, shouldn't we be calling 911? But no, Trish was already seated on the hardwood floor and her, all together, looking oddly calm. But this was not the plan. I know for a fact the midwife can do this, but this isn't how. She'd have all the necessary materials at the ready, proper lighting, a sterile area, and gloves on both of her hands. This was not the gig I signed up for. The gig I signed up for involved a little labor at home while we sipped iced tea, and then doctors and nurses and sterile hospital equipment would be there, and free cable while we waited. But all of a sudden, I see this baby all dark hair and twisty shoulders, pushing through what used to be a very small opening. And as I was struggling to not pass out, and with the quickest sleight of hand, the midwife unwrapped the cord from around the baby's neck. Remember the triple sow cow thing? Yeah. And started blowing the first of 2 big breaths into his little mouth. Thankfully, he started to wiggle and pink up, and she laid him across Trish's stomach. As for me, I took just long enough to get on the phone with my husband across the street to tell him we were having a baby on the bedroom floor, and that he should promptly deliver clean towels, peroxide, and my Xanax. But it's 3:19 p.m., and baby Jack is here. So we all take a quick collective breath and wrap my Branson, Missouri Whitewater theme park beach blanket around this perfect little. As you might imagine, Trish and Jared are all smiles and coos, completely distracted by and enamored with this beautiful tiny person. Meanwhile, I am staring down at utter chaos. Think a baby story meets CSI. I mean, we ripped apart bags of scissors and umbilical clamps. There were wet towels and blankets everywhere. But as soon as the baby was out, Trish was like high as a kite. In fact, she was telling us how hilarious it was to see our panicked faces. But I'm standing there looking at the war zone that is her nether regions, and oh my gosh, she's either having another baby, or that's a placenta. I quickly grabbed the nearest trash sack, thinking it's time to get that in the garbage. But no. I'm informed we're going to be burying that placenta under a new tree in the yard in Jack's honor. Well, of course we are. What on earth was I thinking? At this point, the details get a little hazy. I think I might even have a little PTSD. I vaguely remember my children appearing at the door as couriers with a flood lamp, witch hazel, and Perry pads. And I remember being asked to get ready to help stitch Trish up. Speaking of that, I do specifically remember Trish saying, just a wee bit threateningly, "Laura, Noah, don't you cut my labia." That's just one of those things you only get to hear once in your life. If you're lucky. Try as I might, and I have tried, trust me, some of these things may never leave my memory. However, one thing I hope I will never forget is getting to hold Jack for a few minutes while they finally got Trish up off the floor. I wrapped this baby, a child who will always be just a tiny bit mine, in a soft, light green baby blanket, and I took him to the quiet living room, and I cleaned his little face with a wet wipe, and I sang to him. And I prayed a prayer of thanks for Jack's healthy, tiny baby head, his gorgeous, wide-open eyes, and his long little fingers. Then I apologized to him for the fact that he was born on the floor. And I thank God for adoption.